What worked yesterday may not work today, and what's going to work tomorrow may be something, entirely brand new. And I think it's important to always be out there experimenting, being open to new things. Will I do that for a long time? I don't know. If it's successful, great. We'll keep going with it. If not, we'll move on.
Welcome to this week's Change Agent Podcast. The Change Agent Podcast is where we talk with people who are transforming the technology industry, bringing change to their organizations, doing really fantastic things in different industries, in different ways, and in unique ways. My name is Nathan Lesnowski. I'll be your host today. We've had guests on from varieties of industries, from medical to manufacturing to transforming agile to engaging in the way we think about security to talking about how we transform payment industries, so many different interesting things. And today is no exception. Today we have one of the best community examples that I know. This is Chris Wagner. Chris Wagner is very engaged in the business intelligence community. He's a Microsoft MVP. He's been a rock star at Rockwell Automation for many years. And what he really demonstrates is a person who's engaged in transforming his industry, making it inclusive with individuals who are getting into the industry and learning about technology, and also has a story to tell about the way he's brought technology and a technology community to the business that he works in. So welcome to the conversation today, Chris.
Well, Nathan, thank you for having me. This is a topic that I'm super passionate about, so I'm excited to talk about it with you and your viewers.
Awesome, Chris. So just tell me a little bit let's start maybe about community. What does community mean to you, and especially what does community mean in the technology space?
Well, that's a great question, Nathan. When I think about community in technology, it's how we in the community work together, thrive, educate, and teach each other to help everyone deal with the issues of technology and the issues that we have in solving the needs that our businesses have in an ongoing and ever-changing technology landscape, right? So, not long ago, we were in a world in which we would buy a platform and we'd have that platform for 5 years. Then we might upgrade it and keep it for another 5 years. And we'd be working in a fairly solid state for potentially a decade. Now that we've moved into the cloud and our services are updating and changing on a sprint by sprint basis, we need that community more than ever to help people stay up to date with the ever-changing landscape of technology.
Oh, that's really interesting. So what got you started in the technology community versus just doing it for yourself? When you think about, all right, I'm building a skill set, I'm delivering a skill set, but you've invested a lot of personal time, not to mention even the business time, in building community in this space. What got you started?
I really got started in building out the community when I realized that I needed to do more to help that next wave of people working in tech. And that could be people that, are fresh out of college, or it could be people that are just now starting to adopt the technology, right? I wanted to create an environment where I was able to reach a helping hand out and help people deal with the challenges that they had when it comes to dealing with these new concepts that are very brand new to the human experience, right? One of the first blog posts I wrote was about how, as humans, we've known accounting for 2,000 years, and we still have to study it and work with it and learn about how to work with accounting. And when it comes to technology, this has been around for like a drop in the bucket, right? Like,
yeah.
Our parents didn't really deal with computers much at all, right? So I realized as someone who has been working with technology since I was like 7 years old, I needed to be one of the people that was out there reaching out and helping people out, because not only did it help them do more, but it helped me learn more about the technology and be better at what I do.
What would you say about the tension that exists between, I don't know, competitiveness in a sense of persons in an industry and the natural, like the rising tide floats all boats sort of nature of this. Like that, I want these skills because I am I'm a like a restricted commodity. Not as many people have this skill, so I'm more engaged. I'm more sought after. Versus this idea that the more of us that know and love a technology and get better at it, the more it's prevalent and the more engaging it is, and so on. Like, what do you think about that tension?
I think one is, that the tension of like, hey, I want to be the best, and I want to protect this, is a relatively like kind of old school methodology of thinking about technology, right?
Yep.
With how easy it is to access information in the internet, and with how classes, materials, and everything is so readily accessible, that people who act like that find themselves pigeonholed and off to the side, and find themselves in really difficult situations. Sure, they may be an expert inside of a space, but they can get really kind of trapped. And honestly, I have, over the years, I've really started to see those types of people really drop away and change the way they look at tech, because they can see the advances in technology and the advances that come from the communities, and it becomes really obvious to everyone that like we are at a sea shift change, or like we're at a change moment where it's like, oh, that old mentality doesn't work. It's clear, and this new way of working together as a community and helping each other out and growing and learning from each other is truly the best way to work inside of the tech space.
Can you tell me a little bit about, how does a person, how do they find the kind of community engagement that's right for them? For example, you're really involved in this sort of data god of the week idea, which is super cool. And there's blogging going on. There's you do a lot of speaking, but maybe other people, they're not quite as comfortable with video. Maybe they're more comfortable with blogging, or they're more comfortable with creating code snippets or reusable assets. How would you suggest a person find the initial vector that's right for them?
Well, I think you're exactly right, is that there are so many different avenues for how you can contribute and how you can be part of that community. Find what fits best for you. If you are, and that's why I love technology. I mean, if you are a heads down worker who just loves to dig into the code all day long, great. Tons of opportunities for you to do that, right? And if you're that guy and you want to start sharing that stuff out, that's awesome. Start publishing stuff out into Git. Share those things out into the communities. Like, talk with other people that are out there, and you'll find those Type A personalities who will be attracted to the stuff that you're doing. They can partner up with them and help promote and market, basically market the stuff that you're doing. It can be really effective in spreading that. So that's what I like about the tech community is it is okay for everyone, regardless of where you fall on any spectrum, to work and operate inside here. And the barrier of entry is, it's just, can you get the job done? If you can, awesome. Get on board. We're happy to have you.
What would you say is really successful at spreading the community now? You think about, there's always these sea changes, right? Certain things are more effective at certain points. We went through pre-pandemic, there's things that were successful. Then we started to have a lot of online presentation. Now we've kind of gotten to fatigue of that, and online user groups started to peter off a little bit. They're starting to launch back up again with people being in person. What have you experienced works really well in the kinds of things that you're involved in?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. There is an ebb and a flow, and what worked yesterday may not work today, and what's going to work tomorrow may be something entirely brand new. And I think it's important to always be out there experimenting, being open to new things. Like, I recently started to get into YouTube Shorts. they seem like they're kind of fun to do. They're 15 to 30 seconds or whatever, and it's a great way to get a little message out there. Will I do that for a long time? I don't know. If it's successful, great. We'll keep going with it. If not, we'll move on, right? That's the the whole advantage of working in the cloud is that you can try, you can experiment, and what succeeds you promote, and what doesn't you just let it go.
I totally agree. I feel like one of the things that I've liked about the last year is I've tried a lot. And some of those things I really enjoyed, and some of them I really liked for a while. Like I started doing these like backyard break things, and I was like, all right, let's just go get a camera and record something in the backyard and talk about something. And at the time, it was apropos and it hit what people wanted to hear, and it was interesting. And for me, it sort of emotionally petered off a little bit, but at the time, it was just like it's exactly what I needed in a sense. Like it was almost a release, but then also it was something that the community responded to. And then I've seen, not to compare myself with them, but Scott Hanselman, for example, started doing TikToks. Like I don't even have TikTok, right? But he's doing TikToks, and people are responding and interested in that, and it's like TikTok on coding. I'm like, wow, like I didn't even think about tech community on TikTok on coding. It's like, wow, great kind of moving into something new.
Right. How many things, if you've been working in tech for a long time, how many short little tiny tips and tricks have you developed over the years where you're like, oh yeah, I got to tell you, always pull up Notepad++ and do this in it, right? That's my text editor. Right. And I don't know, it's a religious battle, so I don't want to necessarily get into the whole text editor thing, but, but showing people these little tips and tricks.
Excuse me, Scott Guthrie's here. He wanted to say that Notepad, just Notepad is better than Notepad++.
Oh my God, just that's discounting Scott Guthrie's right there.
So, another question, this is kind of shifting a little bit to what you've done over at Rockwell. So you have been building you've taken not only the work you've done in the community and brought that as a professional, but you've built a tremendous data community within the business that you're working at. Can you talk a little bit about how community is not just a sort of external thing in a sense? It's also an internal thing to a business, and businesses benefit from that.
Oh, well, and Nathan, we are very blessed at Rockwell to be a company of engineers. And while we talk about this community we've built, that community has been there for over 100 years. We've really always taken that engineering mindset to any problem that came along. And 2 years ago when I joined Rockwell, we were faced with how do we deal with this massive surge in people starting to get into business intelligence, starting to get into self-service frameworks. How are we possibly going to be able to support these numbers? We're not, because we weren't talking about like one or two reports or one or two apps. We were talking thousands of reports and thousands of applications, right? And so it became a challenge of scale. And I kind of said, if we don't crowdsource this, and if we don't make this community like kind of come together to solve these needs, we're going to really struggle to be able to keep this up and running. And when we said, hey, let's do this, let's get community together, let's meet on a regular basis, let's kick this off, let's do lunch. I got budget for lunch for 50 people. Microsoft chipped in. Hey, 50, you want to come find out about this new community? That'd be great. And we sent out that invite. And at the end of the first day, we had 400 people sign up for the lunch. And by the time we got to the event, it was like 1,200 people were signed up. And we realized that the community at Rockwell and the community of people who want to take ownership of what they're doing when it comes to technology was just massive, right? So we didn't just do a lunch. We did a full day of presentations and trainings and insights into where we are going as an organization. We did that our first year, and then last year we did a 2-day session where it was an excellent way for us to bring everyone together, train everyone in all of the new piece of tech that was out there, and then consolidate our efforts around all of around coordination, right? Like, I don't know about you, but I'm busy all of the time, with all the different projects, with all the different efforts that we have going on. Coordinating, planning trainings, doing communications is something that's really easy to fall by the wayside. By having this basic annual tech conference that we host, it ensures that we do communicate this stuff out. We communicate it broadly, and we ensure that people are getting the training and the information they need to succeed. So I think it was just incredible the way Rockwell had just immediately jumped into action and said, yes, we want to be part of that. And it's been exciting to be involved in that community as we got it up and running. Yeah, it's been great.
Was it easier or harder because they were all engineers, architects, people that had experience building things? How did that come into play?
Well, so really the good news is people innately got it, right? The people who were in that classical mindset of hey, this is my stuff, I know it, and that were very territorial, saw immediately how much value and power came from bringing the community together, right? And what this community really has been focused around, I talk about this all the time, is it's an environment where we can hit on the three key factors of education. That's see someone do it yourself, and then show someone how you do that, right? And that is the path to mastery and true learning. And by creating this community, we give an opportunity to everyone, regardless of where you stand on the spectrum, for the day one engineer that's right out of college or in college, right, and who's just getting started, to that master who's been working at his craft for 40 years. It's a forum where they all get to work together and they get to learn from each other. And, it has an immediate, unique appeal to everyone involved.
Oh, that's awesome. I love how, in a sense, the unexpected swelling of the interest went from, hey, we're just going to do a lunch, 50 people, to thousands of people who are excited about this. What have you experienced from a results of that? How has it changed the business? How has that community sort of transformed the culture in your mind, or extended the culture?
Well, yeah, so that's a great question. So it has really, really changed the way, our weeks work, right? So our weeks used to be filled with all sorts of firefighting on a variety of different issues, from small to large, to no longer having to worry about a lot of the challenges broadly across our organization, because that community is able to come together and solve those challenges and help people out, right? So we've got our Teams forum, we've got our old Yammer forum, and people are constantly going back and forth and solving these issues. Now we are able to take on and truly focus our energy and efforts into the larger enterprise issues that are facing Rockwell, to help us evolve our cloud strategy onto that next wave, and know that at the same time, people are getting their needs met. They're able to go out there and develop and automate their work, so that they're, as an individual, as a team, as a department, and as an enterprise, that everyone is meeting their goals and their needs.
Mm-hmm. Where would you say, this is kind of related to the community tension that we talked about before, the old school, new school sort of thing. How does that relate to a company that's producing their own intelligence? What within the organization is something that you keep to yourself versus what do you actually encourage them to share outside the organization in the broader community? Here's how we did it. For example, right now you're talking about here's how we constructed a great community at Rockwell. Your competitors could see it, anyone could see it, but ultimately it means something for the business. It's attractive. There's something to that. But then there might be some other things, like you're probably not sharing like, well, we created this application and it has a certain amount of intellectual property to it and it's really valuable to us, so we probably won't share that. Like, how have you, is there any rhyme or reason to how you think about that?
Yes, I'm not allowed to discuss that. I mean, there's some definitive things that are like, Rockwell on Rockwell products, right? And technology that we've built out, that's what we sell. That's what we use. There's some kind of boundaries around what we share and what we don't share there. But in a lot of regards, Rockwell sees itself and works hard towards being that thought leader inside the industry, right? Our devices produce, someone said it, our Rockwell devices produce upwards of 30% of all IoT information that exists, right? That's a fantastic amount of data, right? So we have a lot of expertise and knowledge around how these things work and operate. And as long as things are on the other side of that, right, we do like to talk about, key principles and how these things should work and how we think about technology, right?
Awesome.
I hope that answers the question.
It does, yeah. So as a person who's really involved in the broader technology community, and sees the things that are being filled by, folks who are doing a great job getting engaged, where are areas that you feel like there's a gap? Where is there not necessarily from a capacity standpoint or whatever, but like, where are there holes that like the community hasn't done enough to transform this yet? Like maybe it's inclusion or it's something around, what's your opinion on like how we can, where those gaps are and maybe how we can fill those gaps?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one of the issues that we used to be exceedingly good in technology at that has fallen away is what are the best practices? What are the standards? Especially as these new pieces of technology come along, right? Like something that came along 3 months ago doesn't have a decade worth of best practices associated to it, right? So developing those best practices, explaining to people, okay, hey, you can do this in this situation, but in all of these other situations, you should not do that, right? Like, I think that's one of the biggest gaps that exists in technology is that, just because all these things are possible doesn't necessarily mean we can or should do them, right? It really depends upon the situation that you're in, the audience that you're serving, and, the maturity of both the technology and the people that are going to be supporting that technology.
Oh, that's a good point. I've experienced that myself, like with the degree to which there's so much new in the in the extent to which it's released in an agile way. It's not like, hey, this is Exchange Server and I've got 12 years of experience on it, or SQL Server for that matter, right?
Right.
Certain people in the SQL community have been able to ride that thing for the last 10 years, right? With the same kinds of characteristics and advice and so on and so forth, right? But, some of these other platforms, it's like what came out last week and everybody's trying it.
Right.
So is it just, maybe it's like the attitude of ingenuity and invention and experimentation sometimes causes us to lose a little bit of this works and we've done it before.
Yes, there's that, right? You want to explore and you want to go in that direction, and people are, but often they forget that there's reasons why maybe you don't want to, right? And often that self-exploration and that trying new things, you don't want to dampen that spirit, right? You don't want to get on your kid and like every time they do something wrong and like just yell at them, right? Because you break their spirit, right? Same thing with someone who's out there trying new pieces of technology. You want to give them room to breathe and try new things to see how it can work. But you need to provide the guidance on you when that's going to be, or what does that really mean to be successful, right? What does it really mean for that to be supportable, or something that could be truly an enterprise based solution, right? And because I think that you look at like Microsoft's framework, right? They talk about like solid at the core, variance at the edge, right? Which means if you're running in the enterprise, it's all got to be automated, it's all got to be process driven, right? Like it's got to be supportable, right? Like all sorts of stuff comes in play when you talk about that enterprise grade solution. But when you're talking about something that you're going to do for yourself, right? Like you just want to tinker around with some technology, go hog wild, right? Like key in some data, right? Like play with it, have a good time, right? That's one of the things I do all the time, and why I think it's valuable for me to invest in some of the community work I do around my MVP program is I tinker, right? Like so, I want to do a demo and I want to showcase these these pieces of functionality. Well, great. In my house, I haven't stood up an enterprise-based server farm, right? Like I don't have all that stuff up and running, but I tinker with it and get it to the point where I can do that demo. And through that process, I learn a lot about the technology that's going on. It keeps me fresh. It keeps me understanding the new tech that's out there. And it keeps me understanding, where that technology is in its maturity cycle, right? I often talk about, and this is true of each and every deployment in this whole like agile mindset, right? We talk about, MVP products. What's the minimum viable product? Well, okay, if you're on day one of an MVP release, that minimum viable product may suck, right? It may suck really bad. And it may suck so bad that people go, no, this is not worth it, kill it. And that's okay, right? That's fine. It may die and we keep iterating on, and that's awesome. But if it takes that next step, right, and they keep enhancing it, they keep growing it, eventually these products will move out of that suck category and move into like, okay, this is okay. We can now start to do more with this. This becomes more accessible. And then, eventually as those products become more and more enhanced, all of a sudden it moves into that like, okay, this is great. This is ready for an enterprise. This is something we could drive our companies off of. This is something that's ready for us to make financial decisions off of. This is truly ready to go, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that when we look at solutioning and we look at all the products that we may be using or services or features, where is that product, service, and feature in that life cycle, and line up that effort accordingly.
What would you say to a company that isn't sure if it wants its employees to be involved in the technology community as a encouragement? Like they're, we both seen companies that are like super highly engaged in the tech community and other ones that aren't. And if you were going to be talking to someone who's in a company that isn't super highly engaged in that tech community, what would you say to them to encourage them to get engaged?
So getting engaged in a tech community is one of the best ways to improve the technical capabilities of all of your resources, not just the ones who get engaged, but the ones who get engaged in that tech community, they're going to start leveling up their skill sets potentially across a broad range of skills, right? So no longer are they niche in whatever niche job they have, but they're going to be able to start to get out there and explore things that interest them. That's going to build that fire and that passion in them for creating better solutions, for really engaging in that technology. And then they're going to come back and they're going to share that with the people at work. That's going to in turn level up the people that are around them. That's just going to continue to grow and foster the technical expertise inside your company so that, it becomes a huge component of your training program, of how you're ensuring that everyone you work with is keeping their skills up to date and really helping you grow as an organization. On the like recruiting and hiring side, when you are engaged and you get that message, hey, Chris, just joined Rockwell last week. love your blogs and videos. Can't wait to work with you.
Like that actually just happened with, I don't know, I am, been following, there's a couple companies in town who recently switched CIOs, right? And this particular CIO is really involved in the community, and they turned from a company that nobody in tech wanted to work for to being one that is very attractive, from a company that's attracting top talent to do interesting things to transform their company. So it's useful for tech and for the people that work there, I think. Chris, tell me a little bit about your inspiration. There must be someone in your life that has caused you to be the kind of change agent that you are. Someone who's engaged in the community, who's sharing knowledge, who's going over and above, both in your business and in the external community. Who's inspired you to be that kind of person?
Well, that's a good question. I think the person I think of most when you ask me that would have to be my father. Since I was little, he always encouraged me to try new things, to get involved with technology, to help others around me, to explore, to be creative, to try and get out there. He encouraged me to actually get involved in theater and to become comfortable in my own skin, talking in front of people, right? And next person I'd really think of, so my dad had a big component there, but my wife would be the other thing that has really changed the way I truly look at how I interact with others, and it's really helped me see through more than just my narrow point of view, see people from all the other different perspectives, understand that they have a lot to contribute. Even if I don't know what it is right from the start, I'm always eager to learn about people and what they bring to the table, because I know that they have something that I just don't know and I haven't experienced, and I want to learn about that. I think those are the two people that have really influenced me the most when it comes to building out communities and doing outreach and connecting with others. I cannot express how important it is to build out your communities inside your companies, to connect with your community at large, and to learn to play with technology. And once you start doing that, this no longer feels like in his work. This becomes something you get to play and engage with every single day.
Awesome. Totally agree. And thank you so much for being a guest today. You're inspiring, and your work in the community as well as your advice is so helpful to our listeners and to the community at large.
Right back at you. I mean, how long have you been an MVP now?
11 years.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Going back a while.
Oh, that's great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chris. And thank you for everyone listening. We'll see you next time on the Change Agent Podcast.